to listen to you to talk specifically on this topic, which is so very important, to all the researchers, whether they are students or faculties or even matured researchers who would like to go back to some very basic and crucial things in publishing. You know, it's absolutely my pleasure to welcome you here. SIM has always given this thirst to research along with the practice part of operations management. Yeah, because as an institute, we typically, I call this as a 3I institute on a B2B model, from industry to institute and back to the industry. So while we operate on this model, research is a very important ingredient to this recipe that we have created for our MBA aspirants, and of course for the industry also as an ultimate beneficiary. It's absolute pleasure to have Professor Subodha Kumar on the seventh episode or webisode of Editor's Choice. And if I go back to the past six speakers, each speaker has left us with some key insight, and something that's a very critical takeaway. Yeah, though it looks like everything is about publishing, everything is about identifying where things can go wrong, but at the same time, each speaker with his or her own expertise, has left us with valuable words of wisdom, I must say. And now that we have Professor Subodha Kumar, of course, Paul Anderson, distinguished professor in marketing and supply chain, and I've said that earlier also, he has a very unique and a very attractive profile where you link the whole value chain, all the domains of the value chain are linked, and the professor has worked on those areas also. So very hearty welcome, Professor Subodha Kumar, and we are all eager to listen to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Over to you, Dr. Manatkar.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for your opening remarks. As a researcher, who wouldn't want guidance for writing and publishing good research papers? So without any further delay, let me introduce you to our expert for the 7th episode, Professor Subodha Kumar. So Professor Subodha Kumar is the Paul R. Anderson Distinguished Professor of Marketing and Supply Chain Management at Fox School of Business, Temple University, Philadelphia, US. He has joint appointment in the Information System and Statistical Science. He also serves as the Director of Center for Data Analytics and the PhD Concentration Advisor for Operations and Supply Chain Management. Professor Kumar studied at the University of Texas at Dallas, where he earned his PhD and MBA. He has also received master's degree from Indian Institute of Technology in Kanpur and Bachelor of Science Engineering degree in Mechanical Engineering from BIT Sindri, both in India. His research and teaching interests include artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, fintech, supply chain analytics, healthcare analytics, social media analytics, retail analytics, digital marketing, cybersecurity, econometrics, and analytical modeling. He has published several papers in reputed journals and referred conferences. In addition, he has authored a book, co-authored 2 book chapters, 2 Harvard Business School cases, and 4 Ivy business cases. He also has a patent. Professor Kumar is a deputy editor and department editor, production and operations management journal, and executive director, management and business review. Professor Kumar serves on advisory board of Insights and the Srini Raju Center for IT and the Network Economy at ISB. He has featured on NBC, CBS, University of Washington Television, Indian School of Business Management, Briefs, and Industrial Engineering magazine. He has received numerous research and teaching awards. At Temple University, he recently received the Research Award in Department of Marketing and Supply Chain Management, the Dean's Research Honor role in Fox Business, and the Faculty of the Year Award for the MS Business Analytical Program. He has also received the Ricky W. Griffin Outstanding Research Achievement Award at Texas A&M University and the Association of Former Students University Level Distinguished Achievement Award in Teaching which is among the most prestigious award at Texas A&M University, among others. With this, now I request Professor Kumar to deliver his session. Thank you.
Thank you for very kind and generous introduction, and thank you for having me again. It's very nice to see you in the second time, and as Dean told, and I'm really pleased. Although I'm this time I'm talking little different things than what I talked last time. Can you guys all see my screen in the presentation mode?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
So, again, thank you for having me, and thank you all for joining. And many things I will say you already know, but I will put my sixth sense, and I'll be happy to take any questions. More than telling you the tricks, I will be happy to answer any questions you may have. So, before I jump into some of the things that I strongly believe, and we have to understand, especially it's more important so in business school publishing than any other, that we are a student our lifelong. We keep learning, and I always tell my students and co-authors, and I have the honor of having more than 100 co-authors. So I work very closely with doctoral students and mostly assistant professors, because that's where all the innovation comes, I believe, and I strongly believe in that. And I always tell them one thing, I always take proud in what I write, but writing style changes every 2 years. So don't tell me that you wrote this 3 years back, I'm following that. That's not going to work. So, we are evolving. In business school, both presentation and writing changes, I will say, every 2 years drastically. The type of problem we are solving change. And the reason is that world is changing, businesses are changing. So we have to evolve with that. And if we don't, then our research is obsolete. And that's what we don't want in our business school. Business school research is supposed to be very relevant. So I'm going to touch on those aspects which I think is somewhat permanent, and the things that keep evolving and how you can learn from that. So before I jump into that, let me very quickly talk about the journal. So I'm mostly associated with these two journals, although I work with other journals, but my key work is with production and operations management, and also with management and business review. Management and business review is more practitioner. I will not go too much into that, but let me talk about POM journal. Now, those who don't know, it is one of the most premier journal in operations and supply chain management. This is the only operations management journal or pure operations management journal in Business Week list of top 20 journals. In addition, it is in all the prestigious list, Financial Times, UT Dallas Top 24, and ABDC A-star list, and so on. And it's mostly considered A in almost all tenure decisions throughout the world, not only in the US, and many others. So the one of the challenge that I have as managing the journal is that how do we make sure that we publish the best quality work, but at the same time, these days as an editor, I worry a lot about type 2 error. In fact, it is very interesting that 2 days back, management science editor had sent editorial, and he talked about the same thing, and we have talked on those things several times. So, the thing is, we don't want a good quality or innovative paper to get rejected just because reviewers feel that it is not rigorous enough, and so on. So that becomes very challenging. So just to give you an idea about our journal, we have this is the last year's 2019 data. We haven't got 2020 data yet. It is accessed in many countries. The darker shade-based circulation is more concentrated. You can say India has fairly good circulation of the journal, where research is like really gaining. Institutional reach also, like India right now comes here, but it is growing very fast. These are some statistics, and I will focus on the important ones. See the downloads that are increasing, and big contributor to that is China and India. That's where the downloads have increased in the last couple of years a lot, which is a very good sign. You will see here, China, of course, have gone up in downloading countries very high. But India is pretty good. Actually, if you look at the Asia, this is Hong Kong, China, and India, lead the pack. But even worldwide, in terms of download, India is doing pretty well. Now, people ask me what get published, and that was one of the questions also I got today, that what is really getting published. I'll tell you what was the most downloaded article. That is a good measure of what really is getting prominence. And see some of the things you will see here common. Big data. We had a special issue. We got a lot of downloads from that. This paper. This paper was also on big data. Another thing you will see, healthcare. A lot of papers coming on healthcare, especially online healthcare platform. One which is becoming very interesting is the electric power industry. Actually, Jeffrey Parker and Martin Bichler from Netherlands, they are doing some path-breaking work on that how the whole electric power industry is going to grow. Social media is another area which is going prominent. So those who are thinking what are the area that is really going to grow, these are the area we are going to see a lot of work on that in very recent future. Platform economy, that is growing a lot. In terms of country of submissions, again, India is third, and it is by big margin, so which is very good. Although I'll talk about why the rejection rate is higher than other places from Indian papers, and I'll get into that. There's a small hurdle into that. So in the number of acceptances, India is not that high, and of course that can change. We have very fast review cycle. We try to return papers in little more than 2 months. Because that's very important for a lot of people. We had 1,006 submissions in 2019. I should have updated. In 2020, we had 1,584. So we had around 60% increase. Now that is with every journal. During COVID, people were writing a lot more papers. So 1,584. So it's like a huge jump that happened. Now in this month also we have got many. We may not hit, maybe I think 1584 was exception, but we will easily hit 1400 or so this year. So huge increase in submissions. As you can see, the number of submissions are going up every year. Around 20% or so papers. Now this is the important part here. Around 20% or so go in second round, and the acceptance rate is around 10%. So almost half of them even get rejected after the first round. And I will go a little bit into detail of that. What makes the journal what makes your 20 versus 80? Sometimes it's a very thin line in that, and I'll get into that. And number of acceptances are a little bit skewed because they are the papers submitted earlier, so it's not exact match. But yeah, and our acceptance rate is similar to any other top journal in the field. We have published, but we are publishing more papers also, so our acceptance rate is not going down with more submission. Just the acceptance rate remains almost the same. Only thing is the number of submissions and number of acceptances are going up. So we are printing more pages. We have started a lot of new departments. In fact, the last one, we are getting a lot of submissions from India. In fact, in the disruptive also, these three, and we keep adding more department as we go along. We have 10 ongoing special issues. A lot of them, this one of them is a co-editor, is a faculty from IIM Ahmedabad. So we have a lot of Indian presence in the journal. This is a survey we do every year. We ask the question that which journal do you count for your tenure decision? And those who are in operations management field, is very important data for you to have. And so this was worldwide survey we do, and the data is kind of consistent year after year. So management science comes on the top, even though it's interdisciplinary, that is counted highest. Then second base comes operations research and POM, both were around 85%. And then MSOM 82, almost there. MSOM is considered as the same one. JOM is also a top journal, although not exactly same, but still is mostly regarded as a top. And I will say next journal come decision sciences, and the decision sciences editor are really poised to make this number higher. We had several discussions, both are very close friends, the new editors. So they want this number to be at least in 60s or so. So we'll see that. So there are a lot of good journals, and these are the universally accepted top journals in the field. There are many other good journals though, very reputed journals, but these are in the, I will say, in the highest class. The another journal that I manage is Management and Business Review. Now this is at the interface of academics and the practitioner. And in this journal, actually, Forbes came with that the first time they're having a competition to Harvard Business Review. But here the idea is that we are trying to publish papers from all over different schools. So we have and poets and quants also covered. So this is we have 3 editor-in-chief from Michigan, Wharton, and Baltimore. I am the executive editor, and we have 12 co-sponsors here right now. So it is not an initiative of one school; it is an initiative of multiple schools. And we hope to see many papers from India coming in this as well. You can see that ISB is part of our partner school from India. And then we have from China, we have around 250 advisors from all prominent schools, including schools from India. We have from IIM Bangalore, we have from ISB, and I hope to see more from other schools. And I hope Symbiosis will be happy to partner with us on that. So we'll hope to see more on that. The first volume is out. Please download and give your comments on that if you have any. This is the first issue is free, first 2 issues, and this is our Facebook pages. And by the way, our journal also has pages. So this is kind of brief introduction. Now let me go to some of the things that I always hear. So I told you, remember one thing. I told you that you have 20% of the paper go to the second round and 80% don't go. Now, if you go and look at the data of any other top journal in the field, except Journal of Operations Management, which has much higher rejection rate, their acceptance rate is around 5%. But if you go to management science, operations research, MSOM, or even other discipline like information systems research, MIS quarterly, marketing science, they all have very similar statistics, around 20% or so go in second round. So one question I always hear that what can make my paper in that 20% versus 80%, right? So I can tell you there are very small things, a thin line that you can do. And what I find is that many papers that get rejected coming from India, many times it is not because of the idea. Idea is great, not because of execution. Also, execution is also good, but the presentation is not up to the mark. And the second thing that hurts the paper is that how far you need to take the paper to make it a quality paper. Any paper, start from you have to look at the whole package. And I say that a good paper is like watching a good engaging movie. Okay, so let's say that, whoever is your favorite movie director, I like Christopher Nolan, some of you may watch. So like think of a Christopher Nolan movie. So you start the movie and you start watching it, and then you see that, there is something interesting. First of all, in the first 2 pages, people should be clear exactly what is the big picture. And they should also be clear on, they should be still be intrigued in the idea. So idea should be basic, plot should be clear, but they should be intrigued. And as you read the paper, the reviewer should start opening the layer one after other. And if you are able to do that successfully, you write a good paper. Now, many times what I see when I read the paper, I see that the first 3 pages don't got enough attention as it should have got. Okay. So first 3 pages, after reviewer read the first 3 pages, I can tell you more than half of the reviewers make up their mind whether to give a revision or a rejection. Okay. So what should I do and what should I not do? Okay. That is the theme today. So very simple thing, very simple idea. What you should do when you're writing a good paper is that in the introduction, you should be able to tell that why you are solving this problem. So any good problem in a top journal should be something where you are solving an ongoing debate either in industry, most likely in industry, or sometimes in literature, but literature debates come from the industry, right? If your paper is not of relevance to industry in today's world, then the paper is not that useful, right? So in any archival or academic journal, we have to create body of knowledge. Okay, so don't get me confused. We are not writing a consulting paper that does not get published in academic journal, because academic journal wants something which has a shelf life. Right? But also at the same time, it should be able to address some pertinent problem what we have right now. Or sometimes, it is not there, but you see that it is going to come in 2 years. So I say that it is a science fiction, but not to 2050. It is 2023. Okay, that science fiction you can publish, right? Because we have enough data that it is going to happen. Like driverless cars, right? We can publish on that now. We know that it's going to happen. But if you say that, can I write a paper where humans don't eat food but they eat tablets? No, that will not get published. So you can do some science fiction, but up to a limit. So your first 2 pages should focus on who will be interested in your problem and why. And also you have to highlight that nobody has solved this problem. And that should come without going into any details of your model, without going into any details of anything. You should be able to do that very cleanly in your first 2 pages. Then comes the motivation of the paper, or motivation of your problem, research problem. How could I motivate my research problem? Simple motivation is that you show me the examples of companies who are facing these problems, right? That's a simple way to motivate your idea. Very simple. You don't have to do anything. Now, if you see a paper, we have cited like motivation from something which was in 2010. As editor, I will question that why could you not find an example for last 1 year or last 2 years? Why you have to cite something in your motivation which was 10 years old? That raises the question, is the question still relevant, right? If nobody has solved this problem for last 10 years, then there could be only 2 reasons. One is that nobody cares about it, or industry does not care about it, or it is really a hard problem. But keep in mind, if it's a hard problem and relevant, we still keep trying. There are riddles in mathematics which have not been solved for 100 years, but it's not that we don't try. A lot of people try. The classic example is complexity theory and p-hardness proof, right? It's not that we are not trying to show whether p equal to np or not. People are trying. Every 2 years, somebody comes with a proof, right? It's a hard problem. So in any good paper, you should be able to show that it is of current relevance and you are addressing what they need to do. Okay. Now, another problem that I see in motivation many times is that, for example, I'll tell you a very good example in motivation. Let's say that you are working on a problem which Apple is facing, right? Apple is facing, or any other phone company is facing. Now, you cannot write a paper whether you solve Apple's all problem. If you can write something like that, that will never be that high quality can fit in one paper, right? So you are solving at one aspect of Apple. Let's say how Apple manages their vendors. Okay, they're as simple as that. Or maybe vendors of certain type. Now, what I see in the motivation many times is that I will see that paragraphs after paragraphs is written about how Apple works and what is their business, what they sell. But the problem is that when reviewer is reading that, they start asking the question, oh, so you will be modeling this, you will be modeling this. See, publishing is getting into the head of reviewers. You have to think like a nasty reviewer, okay? Don't expect that you are going to get a very friendly reviewer and then you are happy, right? When reviewers could be in many modes. They are happy, maybe they just got married, they are happy, but that does not happen very often. You often will get a reviewer who had fight with the spouse and now in the night take the paper and start reviewing, right? So you have to take that case. You don't take the best scenario, you have to take the worst case scenario, and that happens in most of the cases. So now, how would I deal with that? So get into the head of the reviewer and think, if you are a person who is reading this story, again, go back to my story. When you watch a movie or read a book, you think that maybe this will happen, maybe this will happen, maybe this will happen. You have some idea, right? But give only those ideas that you are able to model later. Don't give any other thoughts, okay? So whatever you are modeling should be somehow written in the motivation. And that is reverse engineering art you should develop. If you can develop that, then first 3 pages, whatever they have got in their mind, that's what will come later. So they are not creating over expectation. Now, at the same time, don't undersell your paper. Tell exactly what you are doing. If you can match that, I can tell you your chances of getting into that 20% is much, much higher than any other thing. So that's the very first trick you have to do. Your motivation should be very balanced. It should contain exactly what is in the paper, nothing more, nothing less. And each component of your model should be motivated. Now, this applies to analytical modeling paper, math programming paper, empirical paper, behavioral paper, everywhere. This theory applies everywhere. It does not matter what your methodology is. At the end of the day, you have a model in the paper. And that model needs to be motivated very nicely. So I will say that a good motivation where you are addressing these things will require you solid 3 to 4 weeks of writing, okay, that first 3 pages. And if you are not spending enough, you rewrite, get a lot of feedback on that and make sure that it is matching with that. Now, read it as a fresh eye, completely fresh eye. Go back and see, if I read this, what would I expect my model to be? Okay, and see if you have all those elements or not. And if you do that, then you're in good shape. Now, the second piece comes that I have motivated my research, but I have to talk about my contribution. That also we need to do in our introduction, right? Same logic apply. In the contribution, you have to say what research problem you are solving. You first have to motivate each of the research question with some ongoing debate in industry. See, these companies are facing it. And as much you can use examples that will help you in making your case. So these companies are facing these problems and I'm trying to solve this. That's why it's a demand of that. The second thing that people say, is your answer to the question obvious? Now, there's a very simple rule to that. Let's say that you have an answer to a research question. Okay. Now, forget about everything, forget all your math, forget all your data analytics, forget all your machine learning, everything. And say that if I go and ask a manager who knows about the field, but maybe have never done any modeling or anything, what will be the answer to this question for this person? If the person already knows the answer to this question and you are just developing some model to show that, that's not a good result. Okay. So your good result should be, the person should say that, well, it depends. Okay. Or there is some ambiguity in that. And now through your rigorous examination, you are able to decipher that. So for every research question, first through references, motivate your research question. Then you show that the result is not obvious. Again, through good argument with references. Again, one of the problem I see in many papers from India is that, or even from China or some other countries as well, and US also has the same problem. I'd say that it's all about the people who have not gone through the same training, they face this problem, is that I see that the lot of statements are given without citation. Now keep in mind, this is not an opinion piece. There are only two things there. One is that you are borrowing from theory and literature or from popular press. Popular press is fine, like something is written in Business Week or Forbes, you can certainly borrow from that. So you have to cite that. And second, your results that comes from your analysis, right? So these are the only two things in there. Now, based on my results, I can give some insights, but that also should be logical and use some references. So I see serious lack of referencing in the paper. I see a lot of statements which are just written. Now, in any academic journals or archival journal, nobody is going to take that on your, since you are saying that is true. No, it has to have a valid reason for that. So use proper referencing and use good referencing. As I told, popular press is fine. Of course, you're not going to cite Wikipedia, but anything which is written, which is edited is fine. It doesn't always have to be academic journal. Like if you're writing something, let's say about blockchain, you are not going to find too many papers on that. So you have to rely a lot on the reputed popular press, right? So you go to Wall Street and so on. Yeah, I'm not moving my slides actually, so just don't worry. I'm just talking here. Okay, I just wanted to give about the journals, and then I'm just talking on the idea. But if you have any questions, you can do. I didn't want to prepare slides for this part. So you have now think, stay with me on the flow. So we have the basic introduction, then motivation of the paper, then your research questions and contribution. Now, another very important point that comes here is that what are you contributing to literature? That's also very important, right? So till now, I have focused a lot on industry implications or industry connection. But when we come to the literature, another problem I see in the literature review is that And this is maybe more traditional style. Now, some of the things what I'm talking here certainly contains some of my personal opinion as well, and some of people disagree with that. But I can tell you the world is changing, and your reviewers are going to be somebody who is not that senior, right? So you have to go by that. Reviewers are the key in the review process. So you have to go with how they are trained, right? And the only way you can keep yourself updated with these reviewers who are very young is that you yourself act as one of them. So my philosophy is that every 4 years, I try to write a new dissertation. So and I seriously believe in that. Okay. So go back and think like what a PhD student would be thinking. So let's say I have to start fresh. I have no clue about this topic. I don't know about this methodology, how I will start. If you keep doing that, then you will exactly know how to keep the pace with what is going on. So in literature review, you are not expected to write a review, even though many people call it literature review. Literature review, the goal is very different. The goal is that how your paper is contributing to this literature. So only write enough to show that people have done this and I'm doing beyond that. Your focus should be what you are doing that they have not done. That should be your focus rather than what they have done. If somebody has to read the review on cloud computing, there are review papers written on cloud computing. They can read that. Your work is that you are doing something about cloud computing that you want to motivate, right? So only talk about the most relevant work, but focus more on what you are doing, what they have not done. And one important thing is that you have to be never attack any paper. It never helps you in the review process, because very high likely if you attack a paper, editor is going to choose that person as a reviewer to get a fair opinion, right? You are attacking a published paper, and many times it does not go well. So I'll tell you, it's not politically correct thing to ever attack a paper. Unless the paper is wrong, then that's a different story. Then you don't write a regular paper, you write errata, and that's where you make your point. But every paper has deficiency. What your goal is that what you address is that, okay, this first paper is great paper, but it does not have this aspect, and that's what I'm doing. Now, always I ask as an editor before I see the paper, and by the way, let me give you some perspective. Like in POM journal, I told you we got 1584 submissions last year. So my role is that the papers first come to me, all of them. So I read them, then I assign to a department editor. Right? So every day I have to read on average 5 papers. Now, how do I decide every day reading 5 40 pages paper and decide whether the paper will go for review or not, right? It's not. So you have to have some set in your mind that this has to, if it is really lacking in all of them. So I'm more of the avoiding type 2 error kind of person. If the paper has any value, I think it should be reviewed. I'm more, and again, as I told, people differ on that. And my goal is that if it is really, there's no chance, then I say no. So what are those things? The simple thing would be to look at that you write a lot about a lot of past papers, but it's not clear to me why you have written your paper. So that should come out in your literature review. Now, when you say my work is different, there are 3 aspects there. First, nobody has done it, but whatever you are doing is of practical importance, right? If nobody has done it and there is no practical importance, then we don't need a paper for that, right? And the third thing is that, yes, it is nobody has done, it's a practical importance, but is that difference enough to write or publish a new paper in a top journal, right? Maybe it's a minor difference, and that is not enough to publish in a top journal. So you have to highlight all 3 aspects with each related stream. Okay. So now we have covered the literature stream. Now come to the part of model. Now model part differs depending on if it is an analytical paper or if it is a empirical paper or behavioral paper. So I'll only focus on the common aspects. The common aspect is that whatever your model is, so let's say empirical paper, you have data. You have to explain how you got the data, how you clean the data. Each aspect should be clear. If it's an analytical modeling, that whatever you break your model into small component and motivate each component, why you have this component. Again, with industry example, with literature. In empirical paper, how you define these variables, why, give a lot of referencing. In behavioral paper, how did you set up this experiment, right? So give every small aspect of your model should be motivated with examples and literature. That's another piece that I seriously see missing. Now, if you look at 20-year-old paper, we didn't used to have that. This is the basic problem and this is my model. I have a 3 pages of assumptions and I solve it. We are out of that world now. That does not work anymore. Your assumption should also be something that still represent a realistic scenario. It's very hard to publish a science fiction paper in a top business school journal now, right? As I told, there are some math journals. I was reading in, I think it was Math of OR. There was a paper on what angle you cut the coconut so that the amount of water spilled is less, right? So, yes, can you publish in any business school journal? No, right? So it's a good paper. It was a very nice math model, but business schools are a little different on that. You have to realize that. So you should be able to establish each part of your model very nicely. Then comes the result part. That's another place where I see a lot of improvement can be done in what I see. The result is not just about these are the results. First, you connect back to your research questions that you have defined earlier. Second, what is the managerial insight of this result? What can managers do? And there should be some actionable item. So looking at this result, they can do something which is directly applicable in their industry. And you should be able to highlight that. Another important thing that I miss in many papers is that, or those who are rejected, is that why you get this result. Now, this is where the generalization come into place. So let's say I take some data set, I get some result. Now, is your result unique to this data set, or there is some generalizability of the result? So what you need to show that why you are getting this result. So some mechanism behind result. Why did this happen? And there you need to go dig deeper. You have to find some references to show that why it happened and create some theories there, right? So, and those should be justifiable theory. And you need to do for each of your results. If you're not able to do that, then you are in trouble. Now, the next piece comes the robustness part. So no paper is without limitations. But what you need to do, identify your limitations. Don't let reviewers identify. If you identify, you are in much, much better shape. So poke holes in your model and write that down. And this is the part where people think if I hide it, nobody will see. It's like if I close my eyes, nobody can see me. It does not work. It's going through 3 top reviewers, 1 associate editor, 1 department editor, 1 editor-in-chief. It's not going to go away. So write down your problems and say what you have done to solve those problems. Okay, and do something about it. And you need to do very nicely. These days, whether it's analytical model, you have to do extension. If it's an empirical model, you have to do a lot of endogeneity tests and so on. So do that very nicely. And finally, when you write your conclusion, again, the conclusion idea is that now you have the whole paper, you have a lot of results, you have managerial insight. How do you synthesize that as a broad story? So if somebody is reading that section, they should be able to see that now what managers can do with these results, what they can jump, they can take this result and then run away these insights, right? That you should be able to do. Again, I'm not talking about solving one consulting problem, it's much broader than that. But these all pieces should be in there. And of course, your proofs and analysis should be sound. I'm telling that that's a prerequisite. But that's a necessary but not sufficient condition in the paper. So you have to do that, but that does not mean that is sufficient to publish your paper. So you have to bring that part very nicely in the paper. And everything, as I told, should be very clean flow in the paper. Spend a lot of time in writing it nicely. Don't make small mistakes in the paper. That will kill. It's all about signaling what you're signaling. If you have a small typos, if you have a bad formatting, nobody cares about formatting because it will be typeset after it is accepted. But it is all signaling. It signals that you are not careful and no reviewer will give you a good chance. So basically, in nutshell, you have to give a lot of emphasis on flow and the presentation of the paper. And each step, as I told, should be well justified and should have a practical relevance and value. And you should be able to show that at every stage in the paper. Now, what I try to do here is that go over all of them. If you think of some don'ts, uh, keep in mind that you are not giving any misleading statements. Keep in mind that you are not attacking any paper. Keep in mind your results. Don't try to put all the results in the paper. That's a very common mistake. That's a big don't. Only do the top results. Best result, the most impactful result. If you have only 3 impactful results, that's enough to publish in management science or POM, rather than having 9 results. Because then reviewers will pick on those bad results and they will say your paper is bad. Okay? So precise, to the point, and then keep a very clean and smooth flow of the paper. Having more complex model is not that necessary as long as it's realistic. So I'll stop with that because we have reached our time limit. As I told, I'll be more than happy to take all the questions you may have, and I'll leave the door open. I think yeah, this was the time. Yes. Okay. So I'll stop here. No, anybody can take charge, and I can talk about that. And feel free to write to me. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
So thank you, sir. Thank you for that insightful session on the do's and don'ts of the paper, starting from introduction to the conclusion, covering literature review, the results, outcomes, and limitations, and managerial insights, etc. So now we have a question and answer session. So we have received the response and from the viewers, and here are some of the questions. What are the latest trends in business analytics in research, and what topics will be attractive to journals in this area?
Yeah, so see, one thing I will say here is that we have different audience here. If you're a PhD student, uh, you have to look for something when you go in your job market that will be attractive. So it doesn't matter what is attractive right now, what is attractive when you graduate, right? So I always say to my first year student, pick a topic that will be attractive in 4 years from now. If you're second year, pick something which is attractive in 3 years from now. So how do you predict that? I say, well, that's where you have to get a good understanding of the field. Now I can tell you something that is here and that is going to stay for some time. And that's why I had shown you that slide also earlier on the most downloaded papers. Now, if you see there, one of the things that you seen that one area is very prominent right now is disruptive technologies. So anything related to IoT, blockchain, fintech, that is going to get a lot of prominence in next few years. Another area is social media. This is a new area, and we are going to see a lot of good papers in operations management on that. Healthcare, even though we had a flooding of papers, still I think we haven't solved a lot of them. Now more focus will go in online healthcare, IT in healthcare, telemedicine, and those kind of papers. We don't have enough on that in this. Another place analytics is going right now in the clinical side of healthcare, where we haven't seen a lot of analytics paper, but we are going to see a lot more of that. And another emerging area that I would like to point out is sustainable operations. There are a lot of things are going to happen. I think this is the starting point where we start seeing a lot of papers. So if I have to list few of them, I think this is the place. And these things are going to stay for a long time, by the way. And platform economy is not going anywhere. It's going to stay for quite some time. Okay. So, and I'll keep taking questions on your chat as well, and I'll intermingle with our earlier questions. Somebody asked about qualitative research. Okay, so let me comment on that. Now, there have been little bias against certain kind of qualitative research by some of the journals. And I'll tell you, there was a reason behind that. There's a history on that. So 4 or 5 years back, there was a chunk of papers in top journals, including science and all business school journals, were suffering from some kind of survey data papers. So people were questioning whether the validity of the data, and some people misused it. We had some bad apples that created the problem. So the schools have become very conservative on that. But that does not mean that we are not publishing. Behavioral research is pretty big. The only thing is that the way you collect the data, you should be able to show that it is done in a scientific manner and try to combine. So for example, if you have a lab experiment, let's say, so do incentivize lab experiment. Okay, don't just do the general lab experiment. If you are doing an Amazon Turk, do that. If you are doing interviews, try to combine that with secondary data. So multi-method thing is becoming very, very popular these days. So see how you can do that. Otherwise, it becomes a little bit negative. It's still getting published. It's not that we're not publishing, but it's get harder. Behavioral operations is pretty strong right now. There are a lot of good papers. But in qualitative, you have to be careful on how you have collected your data. See, analysis part has to be same rigorous like any other. But the collecting data has to be done in a proper manner. If you have done that, then you're in good shape. So, Amar, I hope I answer your question, and I'll be more than happy to take more.
Yeah.
I'll go back to Subodha Kumar. You want to?
So another question is how to select the appropriate journal for submission.
Now, this is a very important point. Now, many people, many of us work in the interface area these days, like information system and operations and marketing, operations and accounting. So how do I decide that which journal to submit? And how do I, more than deciding, how do I frame my paper to that journal? First of all, you should go and read papers in that journal, okay, wherever you want to submit, and see if my paper fits in terms of the theme of the journal, in terms of the writing style of the journal. See, some journals, a lot of results have to be written upfront. Some journals, you don't write too much result. You just say what are the questions you're asking. So read those journals and try to get the flavor of that journal. Now, Journal of Operations Management, they only publish empirical. They will not do pure modeling paper. There could be mixed that you can publish. So you have to understand Journal of Consumer Research, for example, is designed for more behavioral research or consumer behavior research. So you have to know what journal publishes, read the papers in that, then target. I can tell you many of my papers in my career. In fact, some papers I have submitted to IS journal, OM journal, and marketing journal. I have done that also. If I have a bad luck in two, I do that because I write on that. So converting to other journal is uh, not impossible. I will say many papers you cannot. Right? It's a manufacturing paper. It will go in operations journal, but e-commerce paper it can go in IS, OM, or marketing. Right? So if your paper can fit, still you need to change the paper. What I see is that sometimes people take a rejected paper from operations journal or within operations also to rejected in MSOM, they will submit to JOM. Don't do that. You have to still change the paper to fit the style of the journal. I'm not talking about only the formatting style. I'm talking about flow, how the paper is presented. That's more important, the flow and the presentation of the paper. So you need to do that, and then you should be fine. So best way to know where my journal fits is that read the papers in that journal and see, and also the mission statement. But more than mission statement, read the papers that have been accepted. That's the best signal for that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the response. And we have last question. That by the time researcher finishes writing and sends the research paper for publication, either the area, topic, or the methodology gets obsolete, or it becomes so common that you find many research papers published in that particular domain you wish to publish. So, can you please share with us some easy steps to overcome this?
Yeah. So these days, we are in much better shape than earlier. In 2000, I remember when I started my PhD, my advisor gave me a card, library card. So I'll go to library on Sunday and copy like 50 papers. And then I bring home 40 of them are complete waste for me, but there's no way out because I have to take that out, read all night those papers. So we used to do that. We are out of that now. We have very nice Google Scholar, go there and find. So whenever you start working on a paper, the first thing should be find out about what has been done in that particular paper, okay, in that area, and find some 5-6 papers which you think are most relevant. Then what you do, go to the reference list of those papers and find the important reference. But the more important part, go to Google Scholar and see who has cited those 5-6 papers. You can find that also. And there you will find a lot of working papers on that. Okay. Also, Google Scholar these days pulls if something is presented in a seminar and all. So do that, that will help you in basically getting what is going on in the field. And at every stage when you're writing the paper, if you follow that path, follow the relevant conference paper, you will never run into this problem. So my rule for PhD students is that every 2 months when you're working on the paper, keep doing this exercise to see what is in the area. Right? Then you will never go in this blind spot. These are blind spots that you need to avoid, but it's an easily avoidable problem. And I'll tell you that, about the papers being obsolete, the idea being obsolete, that's a relevant problem more for the editors than the authors. That there is some emerging topic. Now, if I don't publish on time, the topic will be gone, right? Now, editors are working hard. Management Science has started fast track. We are also trying to do something like that. So, those papers we are trying to fast track, but that's not your problem. You can't do anything about that. But make sure that nobody else has exactly same problem. Just try Google Scholar and see working paper. That's the only way to avoid. If you do that, you'll certainly avoid that. These days, almost you will find some trace of any paper which is in the area. So you should not be in that problem. Okay. I'll take. There's a question about case writing, right? So case writing is a very different experience. And it takes us away from our more traditional academic writing. I think the whole idea of a good case is that, and we all use case, so we should relate to that. The good idea of a case is something when students read, it creates some tension in their mind, right? They should be able to see that, okay, the things can go in this direction or this direction or this direction. And those cases lead to very good discussion in the classroom. So when you're writing a case, rather than just stating the facts, you have to tease out those tension in the way so that it can take people in different directions. And that, I think, is the key thing that I learned. So my very first Harvard case was with a Harvard faculty, Professor Dick Nolan. And, I learned a lot. This was, I believe, 2003 or 4. And I think this was a very enriching experience. But one key thing I learned is that how to tease out that tension without telling that it is a tension in the case, right? So you don't explicitly say that, but still they should be able to understand by looking at the problem, and that makes a good case. Now, I talked about MBR earlier, right? That's the problem with HBS case is happening. HBS case is very close and getting harder to publish unless you collaborate with Harvard faculty, and they want it to be like that. But another place which is becoming very good is Ivy Business School cases, right? They are getting a lot of good cases, and they are open to publishing from anybody. It should be only requirement is that at least one faculty should be business school faculty, which is fine. We all are in business school. So if you are in industry, then you have to collaborate with a business school faculty. But other than that, they're and they are sincerely open about that. Okay, but again, the logic is same. These days, a lot of cases are getting published for the analytics kind of courses. So if you have a good case in mind where you can provide some good data set, and they're very open to that. Another place they were looking more is the simulation game. So if you can develop some nice simulation game, I think it's a good idea. But yeah, as long as you can tease out that tension in any of these three, that will be my key takeaway.
Thank you, sir, for those wonderful answers. And I now hand over the session to Dr. Arun Kumar.
And then one more question I think you had sent me earlier, and I would like to answer that. What is the difference between articles published in Q3 and Q1 journals, right, in terms of quality? Yes. And I think you mean Q3, Q1 means the tier, right, the top journal versus. So, I gave you the list of journals that we saw in our survey, right? That is at the top journal, that are top of the top journals in the field. But there are many good journals. And I'll tell you the difference between publishing a paper not in that list in a journal. A good example will be EJOR, very high quality journal, but it does not appear in the topmost list of business school anymore, right? It used to be, not anymore. Now, what is the difference in publishing a paper in POM versus EJOR? Most of the time, the key difference is that in the analysis part. you will not see too much difference in the model and the idea part. The big difference comes in the analysis and results. So what difference comes is that, so take analytical modeling paper. What you will do in a form paper, you have to have a lot of closed form solution and managerial insights based on that. Now, what you do, you start jump on numerical results very early on. So you don't push hard enough and go to numerical results. Now, this all top journals will push back, and that makes a big difference on that. Okay. So how can I now get analytical result? I have a complex problem. What to do? I'm solving. You told me to solve real world problem. That's very complex, right? So that's the beauty part of it. How do I make my problem simple, still keep it realistic so that I can get an analytical result? So read more papers on that, you will realize what I'm talking. Same thing applies to qualitative paper as well, right? In the qualitative paper also, what you will see, the difference between the top and not that top journal is that when you start presenting managerial insights or mechanism of the result, you will see that the top papers will go very deep, okay? That this is why it is happening, and test it out, and do a lot of robustness. And these are the insight that you don't see in that other top journal. Another piece which is key difference is that motivating your problem. So motivation is very, very different in top journal and not that top journal. As I told you, have to motivate with ongoing debate. That you see not that rigor needed in the other journal. So if you are able to publish, let's say in EGOR, you can certainly publish paper in form with very small improvement of this kind of issues. So I'll stop with that. And
thank you, sir. Thank you for those insights. I request Dr. Arun Kumar to propose vote of thanks.
Okay, sir. So, on behalf of SIOM, I take this opportunity to thank all those who have directly and indirectly contributed to episode 7 of Editor's Choice, organized by our institute. At the outset, I thank our speaker, Professor Subodha Kumar. Sir, we are really enlightened with your knowledge. We are thankful to our director, Professor Mandana Sunwane, for her motivation and continuous support to make this episode coming to reality. Special thanks to research committee, faculty, staff for their unflinching support and coordination. And our heartfelt thanks to all participants who are connected virtually with us. Before ending today's episode, I would like to announce speaker for the next episode, episode 8, Professor Mincy. He is chair professor at City University of Hong Kong. Professor Mincy is editor of Reliability Engineering and System Safety, department editor of IAAC Transactions, and area editor of Computers and Industrial Engineering. With this, we move on to the end of today's webinar.
can I say a few words before I end? I have been, I started my research journey when I was at IIT Kanpur in '95. So I've been around 25 years. And one thing, I have always been, I spent at least 2 to 3 months in India every year, except 2019 was an exception year. And one thing I'm really, from inside my heart, I feel that India has so much research potential, but we don't see that in top publications. So there is a little gap. So I was very pleased, and this initiative. This is very, very useful. You cannot imagine that you are leading to something very big by having this kind of initiative, this kind of start. So first of all, I'd like to thank and congratulate you for having this kind of events, this kind of discussion that takes us to very different level, which I feel was strongly missing in India. And my hope is that, don't hesitate in these collaborations. I hear from a lot of people, I want to collaborate on research, never bad on that. But at the same time, be well prepared when you reach out to people, see what you want to do. Say that I want to publish a paper in a journal like POM. Read the papers and come up with an idea which is of that quality. And I think that's the key difference. I visit China also very often, and that's what I'm seeing there, is that they're reading a lot of papers and very prepared. When I talk to them, they know what they want to do. So if once that culture is developed, I think we will be in very different state, and it will help. The whole ecosystem is developed. I will tell you, it will help every business school in India to going to the next level. So I really hope you continue with this tradition, keep doing good. And if I can contribute in any possible way, I'll be more than happy to do that. Thank you for inviting me. And thanks to all the participants. I hope to keep getting connected and keep in touch.
Thank
Feel free to connect with me. I'm on social media or email. Okay.
Thank
Thank you.
you, Professor Subodha Kumar. I think you have ignited our minds and of all the listeners, particularly, very rightly you pointed out that there's so many things happening in India. There are a lot of new things that are happening, and there are a lot of new problems that we are also confronting. So this is like a rich arena for research. And you also identified behavioral operations. I think. India has been one of the best geographically also, otherwise also demographically also one of the best countries to really research into it. So thank you so much. Extremely, delighted to have you, and we enjoyed listening to you because you didn't have a structured PPT, and so we were really glued with you on the floor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's all my pleasure. Thank you.
you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.